let's jump over to the news. On Wednesday, day before Thanksgiving, as you probably heard, 2 members of the West Virginia National Guard who were in patrolling, I guess, in Washington D.C. They were shot. They were shot ambush style. One of them, Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, who 20 years old, has died from the gunshots. The second victim has undergone surgery and is in critical condition, and we will see. Hopefully he survives. The suspect, who from everything we know, acted alone, has been identified as Rahimullah Lakanwal, who is an Afghan national. We'll get to him in a minute, and he entered the United States in 2021 under the agreement that Trump signed or the Trump endorsed of and Biden, Trump and Biden, of withdrawing American troops and providing basically asylum to the Afghans who worked with America in Afghanistan. Now, this guy, it turns out, didn't just work with America. This guy was part of a special unit in Afghanistan working closely with the CIA. So it appears that the suspect was assigned to what was called the Kandahar Strike Force, or the 03 unit, one of a number of so-called zero units that work closely with the U.S. and other foreign forces during the war in Afghanistan. So he was, the zero unit was an Afghan intelligence unit, a paramilitary force, maybe a force that executed Taliban, worked closely with the CIA. Not a lot of talk about what this unit did, because some people have labeled these units, these zero units, death squads, right? They were known in Afghanistan for their secrecy and alleged brutality. Members were implicated in numerous extrajudicial killings of civilians, particularly during night raids. Again, all under the auspices of the CIA. Supposedly U.S. officials were, disturbed by the casualties that this unit inflicted, hard to tell. Some indication is that this particular person, the killer here, was traumatized by casualties in his unit and troubled by the killing of a close friend overseas, maybe in Afghanistan. It's hard to tell. I mean, information is still coming out slowly. But again, this is a guy who worked for the CIA, and he worked for them for about 8 years. And clearly, according to officials at least, he suffered from PTSD. The suspect and his family fled the Taliban and relocated. They fled the Taliban, they relocated to Kabul, and then they were transferred to the United States under the Operation Allies Welcome in 2021. He entered the United States under a parole program, not through the lengthier special immigration visa process. Again, I think because of his special status as a CIA operative. He was vetted. During the war, and supposedly he was, screened when he emigrated into the United States. Although it's not clear whether they just relied on the vetting that was done when he was added to the CIA, or whether they screened him separately. Anyway, obviously tragic and horrible, and we still have no idea what the motive is. It seems likely, and again, I'm going to speculate, as other people are speculating, but it seems likely that this is a guy who is mentally disturbed who has suffered PTSD. I don't know who this friend of his who died recently was, but maybe it's somebody he feels like the United States abandoned in Afghanistan. I just don't know, but that's a possibility, and wanted to vet his anger at the United States. It's also curious that somebody who was a trained killer and was part of an execution squad would shoot 2 National Guard troops in Washington, D.C. in a way that so easily led to his arrest and capture. It seems a little, that seems a little strange. If he was top of his game, you'd think that it would be, at least it'd been hard to catch him and he would have found ways to kill without being easily identified. But maybe he wanted to be captured. Maybe that's the whole point. But ultimately, I think the bottom line is everything indicates here, at least initially, this is very early, that this is a mentally deranged PTSD person who's clearly suffering, lashed out, didn't care about being captured, or at least expected to be captured because he didn't do much in order to prevent himself from being captured, right? And just a bad guy, who's become a bad guy as a consequence probably of the hell he went through in Afghanistan, and is upset for whatever reason with the United States about something. We will find out a lot more about what actually motivated him in the future. But note the response of the Trump administration. Note in particular the response of Stephen Miller, right? There is no such thing as individuals in Stephen Miller's mind. There's no such thing as deranged killers. There's no such thing as unhinged individuals. We saw this a little bit with the conservatives with the killing of Charlie Cook. It wasn't that he was a horrible human being who for crazy reasons decided to go kill Charlie Cook. This was the left. This was that tribe killing one of our tribe. Their tribe killing somebody from our tribe. They do not have the capacity to view people as individuals. Everything that they do is in terms of tribal allegiance, tribal generalizations. So Charlie Cook was killed by the left. And now we're being told that these 2 National Guardsmen were killed by Afghans, or even more broadly, if you really want it, they were killed by immigrants from third world countries. Immigrants from third world countries killed, murdered. The Wall Street Journal editorial board wrote, Afghan refugees, quote, shouldn't be blamed for the violent act of one man. Collective punishment of all Afghans in the United States won't make America safer, and it might embitter more against the United States. I agree with the Wall Street Journal completely. This is Stephen Miller's response. This is the great lie of mass immigration, he responds. You're not just importing individuals. You're importing societies. No magic transformation occurs when failed states cross borders. At scale, migrants and their descendants recreate the conditions and terrors of their broken homelands. I mean, this is so ahistorical. It's so untrue. It's so collectivistic and tribalistic. Afghans in the United States have not recreated their society. There's no a Taliban running around the streets and forcing women to cover their faces and shooting up girls' schools. If Afghans were shooting up girls' schools, and if there were a number of Afghans, I mean, this was a phenomenon of Afghans going out into the streets and killing Americans or shooting up girls or forcing girls to cover their faces, then, oh, wow, yeah, that makes sense. But this is one guy, clearly emotionally and psychologically unstable, killing horribly a couple of guardsmen. I mean, Did the Italians who emigrated to the United States, did they recreate the poor, immensely Catholic and rather primitive and backward society that they left in Italy when they came to the United States? Now, some of them did, the ones who created the mafia. But did Italians more broadly do that? I mean, how civilized were the Irish migrants who came to the United States in the early 20th century? The potato farmers escaping the famine, late 19th century. How civilized were they? I mean, not according to Americans of the time who called them every name in the book. And they weren't free in Ireland. And what freedom did they have in Italy, particularly pre-Italy unification? There was no freedom in Italy, not the kind of freedom you have in the United States. Or, the Eastern Europeans, the other people who escaped the Soviet Union, did they bring communism here? Or did we experience communism in the United States because of them? And of course, the reality is that it wasn't the blacks in America who brought over a barbaric civilization from Africa. It's the whites who enslaved them in America and, enforced barbarism on them. CS, collective guilt, why not? They're all barbarians. Stephen Miller happens to be, I think, from Jewish origins, so he should not be surprised that his tribalism, his collectivism, this tribalism and collectivism is leading to people who he considers allies becoming Jew haters, becoming anti-Semitic, and throwing him in with a bunch of Jews that he probably doesn't agree with, like those leftist Jews and maybe pro-Israel Jews. I don't know if he's pro-Israel. But he's Jewish. He's part of the tribe. And the Jews who came here in the late 19th century, early 20th century, how civilized were they? I mean, the reality is that the Jews who left Europe in the late 19th century and early 20th century were the least educated Jews in Europe. The educated ones stayed and were slaughtered in the Holocaust. They were peasants and lived in little villages and craftspeople, and they came from incredibly poor conditions, and they were escaping murderers, escaping the pogroms in Eastern Europe, and they escaped for freedom. And did they do well in this country? Yeah, they kind of did. Did they bring that kind of insular, kind of somewhat backward culture to the United States? For a little bit. First generation, it's hard to break away from that, but they got assimilated. It's just so. And what is mass migration? Is the number of Afghans who came to the United States because, almost all of them, because they were helping the U.S. in Afghanistan. They had risked their lives of their families to help the United States because they believed in the cause. They believed in liberating Afghanistan from the barbarity of the Taliban. These are the best of the Afghans. Do those people coming to the United States, does that count as mass migration? Because he writes, this is the great lie of mass migration. What mass migration occurred from Afghanistan? I mean, this man, this Stephen Miller, is just a horrific, tribal racist. He is the worst of the Trump administration, which is saying a lot because they are, God, are they bad. He is the worst kind of tribalist, collectivist, racist that I know in any kind of leadership position in the United States today. And just despicable. This guy should be shunned. And if he survives the Trump administration, I hope he never has a job afterwards. I mean, he really is beneath contempt. He is really, nasty and shaping. I mean, Trump is bad to begin with, but then he's allowing he's allowing Stephen Miller to shape, much of his agenda, particularly when it comes to immigration, in ugly, horrific ways. Talk about ugly and horrific. This is Donald Trump's Thanksgiving salutation from yesterday, wishing Americans a happy Thanksgiving. This is a holiday of giving thanks. Giving thanks. Donald Trump, a very happy Thanksgiving salutation to all of the great American citizens and patriots who have been so nice in allowing our country to be divided, disrupted, carved up, murdered, beaten, mugged, and laughed at, along with certain other foolish countries throughout the world for being politically correct and just plain stupid when it comes to immigration. You thought you were going to be, congratulated for, for Thanksgiving and the celebration and thankful for the wonders of America. No. This is all of you Americans, all of you great Americans who have allowed the country to be divided, disrupted, carved up, murdered, beaten, mugged, and laughed at. Laughed at by who exactly? I mean, more people are laughing at him. When it comes to immigration, how many of those great Americans are not immigrants? I know it's a cliche, but this country is a country of immigrants. How many of these people are not? How many of you, Donald Trump? I mean, Donald Trump is married to immigrants. His current wife's an immigrant. I think his previous wife was an immigrant. The official United States foreign population stands at 53 million people, according to the census, most of which are on welfare from failed nations or from prisons, mental institutions, gangs, or drug cartels. I mean, that's just straight out a lie. None of that is true. Now, it is true that almost 50% of Americans receive some benefits from the American government. So, yeah, you'd expect some of the immigrants, but these 53 million immigrants, I assume that's foreign-born who live in America. How many of them are actually from failed states or from prisons? How many of them are mental institutions, gangs, or drug cartels? A tiny, 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 tiny little fraction. But that's the story. We'll get to lies later. But this president just says stuff over and over and over again. He said today that tariffs are going to replace the income tax. I've done the math for you to show that that's impossible. But he's just going to keep saying that. And when the Supreme Court overturns his tariffs, if they overturn his tariffs, but let's assume that they do, he's going to say, if they'd let me keep the tariffs, I would have ended income taxes. And it's on the Supreme Court. If you complain about your income taxes, it's all because of the Supreme Court. I could have ended income tax. I could have had tariffs paid for by foreigners, and America would have been great again. And because of the Supreme Court, that's not happening. Because he lies so much that you can constantly be like me, constantly say, look, that's a lie. Look, that doesn't work. Look, that's wrong. Look, and it doesn't resonate. The bold lie is what sticks. It's what holds. And that's a theme. We'll see other bold lies today that are being expressed out there. It's just stunning. Here we go. They and their children are supported through massive payments from patriotic American citizens who, because of their beautiful hearts, many of whose parents were immigrants, those patriotic American citizens, parents are immigrants, and many of those 53 million people who were born outside the United States are also American citizens. But I guess not patriotic because they don't have the blood. They don't have many generations. Because of their beautiful hearts, do not want to openly complain or cause trouble in any way, shape, or form. No. And indeed, patriotic Americans who've been here more than one generation, they never commit crimes. Nope. Don't do drugs. They don't consume drugs. They don't use drugs. And if they do, it's because of the immigrants. The immigrants are seducing them into it. And they don't join gangs. And, they are peaceful, wonderful, amazing people. They put up with what has happened to our country, but it's eating them alive to do so. A migrant earning $30,000 with a green card will get roughly $50,000 in yearly benefits for his family. How many green card holders make $30,000 a year? And $50,000 in yearly benefits for his family? How are you calculating that? What about all the Americans who get $50,000 in benefits? And they've been here many generations, maybe even their ancestors fought in the Civil War. And how come they're still getting 50,000 benefits when they got all the benefits of living in America and benefiting from everything that America gave their families? And then he says, the real migrant population is much higher. Yeah, there are hundreds of millions of migrants here. You didn't know. This refugee burden, how many of the migrants are refugees? He never tells us. He implies that it's all of them, the many more than 53 million. This refugee burden is the leading cause of social dysfunction in America, something that did not exist after World War II. Failed schools, high crime, urban decay, overcrowding hospital, housing shortages, and large deficits. It sounds like the 70s, except for the deficits, which Trump has contributed enormously to making larger and larger. By the way, just because some of you might be enthusiastic about the amount of money that's come in from tariffs, right? The U.S. Treasury posted its numbers for October a few days ago, and it turns out that October was the worst month in all of American history in terms of the budget deficit. So the budget deficit in the month of October was $284.4 billion. $284.4 billion. Now, the second highest budget deficit in American history, second highest budget deficit in American history, was in October 2020. I wonder who's president then. Oh, yeah, Trump. That's right. And that's the second highest. That's also 284, but 0.1, so they're almost the same. Government spending in October versus last year, October. Government spending jumped to 18%. And, yes, maybe revenue is higher, but spending was much higher. Much higher. So deficits are your fault, not immigrants' fault. And failed schools, high crime, urban decay, overcrowded hospitals, all of that was the 70s. I don't remember many asylum seekers in the 70s. Immigration was pretty low, and maybe there was some asylum seekers from the Soviet Union, but not much more than that. Maybe some Cubans. He goes on, as an example, hundreds of thousands of refugees from Somalia are completely taking over the once great state of Minnesota. Completely taking it over. I mean, you can't see a white face in the entire state. Somalian gangs are roving the streets looking for prey, as our wonderful people stay locked in their apartments and housing, hoping against hope that they will be left alone. Carnage in the streets of America, carnage caused by immigrants, always caused by immigrants, never by the good people of America, never by those, patriotic, white, American citizens. They don't cause any carnage. The seriously retarded governor of Minnesota, this is Thanksgiving message, seriously retarded governor of a state in the country, Tim Walz, does nothing, either through fear, incompetence, or both, while the worst congresswoman in our country, Ilhan Omar, he's probably right about that, always wrapped in a swaddling hijab, and who probably came into the United States illegally, in that you are not allowed to marry your brother, spreading a rumor about, marrying anyway, does nothing but hatefully complain about our country, its constitution, how badly she's treated, and her place of origin is a decadent, backward, and crime-ridden nation, true, which is essentially not even a country for lack of government, military, police, etc. True. By the way, this is the kind of response that Trump does, that people love. This is why he wins. This is why MAGA goes nuts for him. It's because he calls Governor of Minnesota retarded, because he goes after Ilhan Omar in this kind of language. This is what makes him likable. He's fighting. These are fighting words. And they love the fighter in him. Even as we have progressed technologically, he writes, immigration policies eroded those gains in living conditions for many. I will permanently, here it goes, I will permanently pause immigration from all third world countries to allow the U.S. system to fully recover, terminate all of the millions of Biden illegal admissions. So no more immigration from third world countries, including those signed by Sleepy Joe Biden's auto pen. All because one guy went nuts. I'm not allowing immigrants from third world countries. It's going to be very interesting to see how he defines third world countries. You think Saudi Arabia will be defined as third world country? Do you think Qatar will be defined as a third world country? Do you think Russia will be defined as a third world country? It's not, but and it won't be. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he defines third world countries and which countries are not on that list. He goes on and on about, these are people incapable of loving our country, and all federal benefits and subsidies to non-citizens of our country do deneutralize. Oh, yeah. Okay, so here are the things, here are the people he's going to stop from immigrating to the country. I'm not immigrant. This is who he's going to remove from the country. I'm going to remove anyone who is not a net asset to the United States, as defined how? Are you listening to this show a net asset to the United States? Am I a net asset to the United States? Probably not, according to Trump, because I constantly complain about him. I'm obviously doing a massive disservice to the United States. I mean, how dangerous is it to give the president the ability to remove anyone who is not a net asset to the United States or is incapable of loving our country? How do you decide that? Incapable. No free will. By his genes incapable? By his culture incapable? By his... What makes somebody incapable of loving America? And who is able to figure out who that is? So now we're going to have a loving the country capability school. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let's have a loving the country capability school. And which country? The country under Trump? The country under some other president? I mean, if you don't like Trump, that automatically means you can't love the country, I think. This is a good one. Sometimes in a whole string of real evil, he says something right. And all federal benefits and subsidies to non-citizens of our country. I think that's fine. How about ending all federal benefits and subsidies to citizens of our country? How about just ending the welfare state? Probably wouldn't happen. Here it gets even spookier. Denaturalize migrants who undermine domestic tranquility. Denaturalize. Does that mean taking away passports? Taking away citizenship? Taking away green cards? Based on what? Undermine domestic tranquility. God, I hope I undermine domestic tranquility. Are you guys tranquil? I hope not. You should be pissed off right now. Later you can be tranquil. Now you got to be pissed off. I mean, think about the power he is taking for himself. Again, I don't think it's legal what he's arguing to do. But imagine if he had the power to do this. Really? I like numbers? Really? Why do we have two? I like numbers. Really? Weren't you calling for that in Islamists in Europe? Did I call for that? Did I call for taking away this thing because they undermine domestic tranquility? Or did I clearly define who I meant and why I was doing it? And clearly defined, and I wasn't going to take their citizenship away, but put them away for supporting the enemy. Put them in jail for supporting the enemy. I mean, you guys are, some of you, that's just damn dishonest, and I say stuff and then my words get twisted in ways that are just, if you can't tell the difference between what I said about Islamists, not even Muslims, Islamists, and why I said it, and somebody saying, undermine domestic tranquility. You can't see the difference between that? Those two? Really? I mean, what does it mean, undermine the domestic tranquility? It's completely subjective. It's completely up to King Trump, Emperor Trump. And then he said, and deport any foreign national who is a public charge, security risk, or non-compatible with Western civilization. There you go again. Non-compatible with Western civilization. What's that? I've never said that about Islamists. I don't want to deport them because they're not compatible with Western civilization. I want to deport them because they're at war with Western civilization. And not even with Western civilization. They're at war with the UK, with Germany, with America, with specific countries. It's a war. In a war, you don't allow your ideological enemy to preach within your country. He's not declaring war. I mean, he is. He's declaring war on all immigrants. And again, how do you define Western civilization? I mean, many on the right today define Western civilization as Christian. White Christian. Does that make us non-Christians enemies of Western civilization? How about atheists? God, atheists. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people on the right, who would consider atheists unequivocally enemies or non-compatible with Western civilization. I mean, luckily, I think we have a legal system that is going to hold in spite of this insanity, in spite of this irrationality, in spite of this wickedness. Wicked, I like the word wicked, wickedness. He goes on, these goals will be pursued with the aim of achieving a major reduction in illegal and disruptive populations, including those admitted through an unauthorized and illegal autopan approval process. Only reverse migration can fully cure this situation. Yep, send them all back. That'll solve all of America's problems. I mean, as I told you since 2015, this is how all authoritarians operate. If you're feeling angst, if you're feeling upset, it's completely justified. Indeed, we need angst and upset for you to be willing to vote for an authoritarian like me. But I want to tell you that the angst and upset that you feel has nothing to do with anything you did. You are not guilty. You are great, wonderful, amazing, patriotic, beautiful people. It's all your problems, all of your anxieties, all of your challenges, the carnage in the streets of America, that is all on the other. On the other. And as I said in 2015, maybe we're not quite ready to say back then that it's the Jew is the other. Maybe we're more ready to say that today, at least in certain circles on the right. So we'll just, since we can't say the Jew, we'll just call it immigrants. We'll just cover them all. But clearly, the Jews are anti-Western civilization. I think I've got a video on that coming up. Definitely. And now, it's not the Jews who are anti-Western civilization. It's some Jews who are anti-Western civilization, according to the Caucasus. It's the Zionists, and Israel in particular. The Zionists are anti-Western civilization. Today's going to be a long show. I've got a lot to say. All right. Well, that was the wonderful message. That's the wonderful message that President Donald Trump conveyed to the nation yesterday on the wonderful holiday of Thanksgiving. He is by far the nastiest, if nothing else, president we've ever had. The nastiest and the most detached from reality. I think even Biden, in his worst episodes of dementia, was not as detached from reality as Trump is. Completely oblivious. I mean, or it's just all an act. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell which one it is. Remove anyone who is not a net asset to the United States or is incapable of loving our country. Now that is, we should that should be like a plaque. We should have that. Yeah, I mean, Republicans all expressing, yeah, this is great. Finally, somebody's saying it. This is amazing. DeSantis and James Woods, and James Woods says anything short of this, and America is doomed. Yes, what's killing America? Immigrants. That's what's killing America. It's not university professors. It's not ideas. It's immigrants. It's dark-skinned immigrants and the Jews. They're the ones killing America. I mean, they're all jumping on this. They're loving this. They're loving this. I mean, Laura Loomer loves it. Loves it. She thinks, she wishes Trump was a little tough on Muslims, but she loves this. Our country depends on it. If this doesn't happen, God, country's finished. Just as an aside, there's literally no evidence that Ilhan Omar married her brother. She's a despicable, horrible, deranged human being. But there's no evidence that she married her brother. But anyway, that's the kind of level we get. And again, it's the kind of thing, if you lie often enough, people start repeating it, people start saying it as if it's fact, and it just becomes part of the culture. It's obvious. Of course that's true. Of course that's true. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Andrew says, Ben Shapiro, what say you? My guess is that Ben Shapiro will ignore this. Or will say something more moderate, right? More moderate. Here's just an example of your president, my president, unfortunately, his attitude. This is who he is. This is what he is. This is the guy you voted for, right? And this is, it's not just you voted for. This is what MAGA loves about him. Here's an exchange that happened in the White House relating to the D.C. shooting. Trump's, somebody says, the reporter says, officials say the suspect in the D.C. shooting was vetted and it came up clean. Trump goes, he went cuckoo. He went nuts. There was no vetting. Now, I think the first part is true. He was cuckoo and he went nuts, which is placing the responsibility on the individual. But then he says there was no vetting, which is just, we don't know if it's true or not. I don't know all the facts. We'll see. Then the reporter says, actually, your Department of Justice, IG, just reported that there was thorough vetting of Afghans who were brought into the United States. So why do you blame Biden? And this is Trump's response. This is the response of the president of the United States, a position that Ayn Rand had real veneration for. So for those of you who think that Ayn Rand would support a Trump, she couldn't even imagine a president talking like this to a reporter. This is what he says to her, right? She's standing right there. He says, are you stupid? Are you a stupid person? You're just asking questions because you're a stupid person. I mean, what do you do about that? What do you do about that? So, this is a president who now says that he's going to revoke the citizenship from Americans who weren't born here if he, and Stephen Miller, of course, determine that they don't love America enough or incapable of loving America. Or that they are disruptive. Or, they're just, they're not compatible with Western civilization. Should I worry? I'm not, but because we have robust law in this country. And even Trump couldn't get away with that. But wow. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Here's a reality check about crime. Whoops, I shut that off. Okay, I closed my, let's see if I can reopen it one second. Yeah, here it is. The reality about crime is that crime is committed by, most crimes in the United States are committed by a small number of individuals from any community. It's a tiny number of individuals who commit violent crimes. Usually, it's people who are repeat offenders. If you just had a 3 strikes and you're out on violent crimes, 3 strikes and you're out means 3 strikes and you spend the rest of your life in jail. Crime would be reduced significantly. And we'll get to some crime statistics later. Crime is reduced significantly. But that's true. In the Afghan immigrant population, the number of people who are criminals is tiny. There's some. It's probably 0.5% of any given population. They're linked to most, well over 0.5% of residents are linked to over 50% of the shootings in any particular area. Most homicide suspects have 8 to 12 prior arrests. Violence clusters. So all of this collectivistic nonsense is straight up nonsense.